It's a little past midnight on 4 dead straight miles of blacktop, out past the foundry, the old airstrip road, and you are sitting on the line with 900 pounds of engine, breathing hard through a hood scoop 6 inches from your face. 2 white lines of chalk mark the box. A crowd you can't see stands back in the dark on both shoulders, cigarette cherries floating like fireflies, and somewhere behind your right shoulder, a flashlight is about to drop. Under your rearview mirror, hanging off a length of fishing line, 2 dice, 1 white, 1 black, swing lazy in the idle, patient, the way they always swing right before everything goes loud. Beside you, Ruthie's got the stopwatch cocked in one hand and the other flat on the dash. And she doesn't look at you. She looks at the light, because that's the job. And you love her a little more every single time she doesn't look at you. The big block underneath you is lumping and rolling at idle 14 to 1 on the carb, cammed hot enough to shake the mirrors, and every cell in your body is nothing but waiting. Across the line, a black 68 sits with its own lump and roll, its own driver, its own crowd betting its own money, and you do not know his name, and you do not care to. The flashlight drops. You do not think about the clutch or the shift or the tack needle climbing toward the red line like it's got somewhere to be. Your hands and your right foot have done this 10,000 times, and they do it again now without asking you a single question. And the dice go from a lazy swing to a blur you can't track, and the whole car stops being a car and starts being a sound. One long, tearing sound getting smaller behind you as the quarter-mile disappears under the tires in less time than it takes to say your own name out loud. You cross the far marked 2 car lengths up. The dice settle. Somewhere behind you, money changes hands in the dark. And somewhere ahead of you, 4 more miles of empty road wait for whatever's next. You are 22 years old. You can build an engine with your eyes shut and drive it faster than any man on this side of the county line. And tonight, like every night, you are the fastest thing on the whole dark road. This is your whole life. Out on the strip road at midnight, you are close to a king, and you have earned every inch of it. There is not a car in 3 counties that will line up next to you twice in one summer. They call you out by name now, guys who drove down from the city just to lose money to you and go home and tell their buddies about it. You know the 4 miles better than you know your own face in the mirror. Which seam in the blacktop will kick the rear end sideways if you catch it wrong at speed, which quarter-mile mark the sheriff's boy watches on a slow Tuesday, and which one he never bothers with, exactly how much later you can hold second gear than the manual says you're supposed to before you cook a piston. Duke, who taught you everything you know about an engine, says you've got hands like nobody he's trained in 20 years behind that speed shop counter. And Ruthie rides shotgun on every single run, calling your shifts off the talk by ear before you've even glanced down, because 2 years in, the 2 of you don't need words anymore, just a rhythm. Out here on this road, at this hour, you are somebody. But 3 years ago, you were nobody at all, a kid in coveralls 2 sizes too big, sweeping a concrete floor for tips at your daddy's gas station on a highway that went nowhere in either direction. Watching cars you could never afford blow past the pumps without slowing down. So let me take you back. Let me show you how a boy who couldn't afford a tank of his own gas built the fastest car on the strip road with his own 2 hands out of parts other men threw away. And what it cost him, 1 race at a time, to fall in love with a thing that the whole country was already quietly deciding to take away from boys just like him. You grew up behind a gas station on two-lane highway that used to matter back before the new interstate went in 12 miles east and drained every drop of traffic off this road like somebody had pulled a plug. Your old man owned the place, 3 pumps and a 2-bay garage and a Coke machine that ate more nickels than it ever gave back. And he worked it from before, light to after dark, for a living that got a little thinner. Every single year, the interstate stayed open and this road stayed forgotten. You grew up under cars instead of in a yard, flat on your back on a rolling creeper by the time you were 7, handing your old man wrenches before you could spell half their names, breathing in gasoline and old motor oil the way other kids breathed in cut grass, and once in a while, maybe twice a summer, something would come through that wasn't a farm truck or somebody's tired station wagon. A car that mattered would roll up to the pumps, low and long and loud, even sitting still, chrome catching the sun, and the driver would get out stretching in sunglasses like he owned every road he'd ever been on. And you would stand there by the pump with a rag in your hand, just staring, not breathing, until your old man barked at you to get back to work. You were maybe 9 years old the first time one of those cars pulled up, and you knew right then, standing in a cloud of gasoline in a highway town that the world had already forgotten, that somewhere out there was a life that moved that fast, and you wanted it so bad it felt like a hunger, low down, that never once in your whole life went away. Your old man wasn't unkind, but he was tired down to the bone, in a way that scared you. A man who'd given the same gas station every single day he had and watched it slowly stop mattering to anybody who drove past. And some nights, you'd catch him standing out by the pumps after closing, just looking down the empty highway east, toward the interstate, toward everything that had left this road behind. You swore to yourself, standing there watching him, that whatever happened to you, you were not going to end up a man standing alone by a highway at night, watching the world go by on some other road. You were 16 when a half-wrecked 65 Chevelle got towed into your daddy's back bay and just sat there because the owner never came back for it and never paid the bill. And your old man, who never once in his life threw away a thing that might still be worth something, told you it was yours if you could get it running on your own time with your own hands. It took you the better part of a year, working nights and Sundays, teaching yourself out of dog-eared manuals what nobody around that gas station could teach you. And the day you finally got that engine to turn over and catch and roar, something came alive in your own chest at the exact same moment. You drove it up and down that dead highway alone for a while, just for the feeling of it, until one night a boy from 2 towns over pulled up next to you at a stoplight in something faster and looked at you like you were nothing and revved his engine once, and you understood without a single word being spoken exactly what he was asking. You beat him by a car length to the next light, and he peeled off into the dark without a word. And you sat there afterward with your hands shaking on the wheel and your heart going like a jackhammer. And the math of it hit you clean and sudden as anything ever had. Every dollar you could scrape from that gas station, every part you could rebuild instead of buy, every hour you spent with your head under a hood instead of in front of a television, it could all go into this one thing. And this one thing could make you somebody, right now, tonight, in a town that had already decided nothing that happened here mattered to anybody. You didn't need the interstate. You didn't need to leave. You needed 4 straight miles of empty road and an engine built better than the next guy's. And out here, for the length of a 1/4 mile, the whole forgotten highway would turn around and watch you fly. The man who made you was Duke, who ran the speed shop out past the edge of town in a corrugated tin building that smelled like race gas and burnt rubber, and never once in 20 years had a customer leave disappointed. He'd raced himself once before a knee that never healed. Wright took the pedal foot out of the equation for good, and now he built motors for other men to drive and watched the strip road from a lawn chair outside his shop with a coffee that had gone cold 2 hours before he ever finished it. He watched you bring that Chevelle around a few times before he ever said a word to you. The way he watched every kid who showed up thinking speed was the same thing as skill. And then one evening he waved you into a bay and started teaching you for real. Not how to go fast, but how an engine actually breathes. Compression and timing and fuel and air, the whole quiet mathematics under the noise. He taught you to blueprint a block by feel, to balance and true a crankshaft, to read a spark plug like a doctor reads an X-ray, and know exactly what your engine was trying to tell you before it ever failed you on the road. And then he taught you the rules, Duke's rules, the ones that had kept every kid who ever listened to him alive on that strip road for 2 decades. Rule 1, you clear that road with your own 2 eyes before you ever drop a flag, every single time, no exceptions, because a road that was empty 5 minutes ago is not a road you know is empty now. And rule 2, the one he only ever said once, dead level, looking straight at you. You do not race a man you cannot trust to keep his own lane, because his mistake becomes your mistake. The second the two of you are side by side at 100 miles an hour, and there is no amount of skill on this earth that can outdrive another man's bad decision. Your first real win on that strip road, you sat afterward in the driver's seat, with your hands not quite steady, engine ticking as it cooled, and you understood, the way you understand very few things in one clean piece, that you had found the one thing in the whole world you were built to be good at. And you got good. Good the way Duke was good before his knee, and then better, because you had a hunger in you that never once let up, and a gas station's worth of spare parts, and know-how sitting right there for the taking. You learned to build a big block from a pile of parts on Duke's shop floor with your own 2 hands. Bore it, hone it, balance it, port the heads until the air moved through them like it wanted to, set the cam timing by ear and by feel until the idle had that lump and roll that told every man on the strip road exactly what kind of trouble was sitting at the line. You traded parts for parts, favors for favors, built engines for other men on the weekends to fund the one under your own hood. And every dollar and every hour went back into the same machine, tighter and meaner and faster with every passing month. You learned the whole culture of that midnight road, the way Duke had taught you to learn an engine. The flashlight starts, the money changing hands in the dark, the pink slip races where a man put his whole car on the line and walked home that night with nothing but the clothes on his back. The code of who you raced and who you didn't, who could be trusted at speed and who couldn't. And you had Ruthie, who'd started coming around Duke's shop with a stopwatch and an ear for an engine sharper than half the men who claimed to know cars, and who rode shotgun on every single run, calling your shift points off the sound before the taste needle even got there, her hand flat on the dash, counting you down at the line low and steady while the dice swung under the mirror. Together, the two of you and that black and blue Chevelle built a reputation up and down 4 counties that no amount of money could buy and no amount of talking could fake. You were fast, you were clean, you never once left a man stranded or a bet unpaid, and on a strip road at midnight in a town the interstate had forgotten, that reputation was worth more than anything your daddy's gas station could ever hand you across a counter. You were 21 years old, and you had built, with your own two hands, out of another man's wreck and a pile of parts nobody wanted, the fastest thing on the whole dark road. But speed takes its cut, same as anything else worth having. And it never once tells you up front what the bill's going to look like. First, it took your money. Every dollar you made building other men's engines went straight back into your own, and you lived those years poorer than your daddy ever had. Poor in a house with a 900 horsepower engine sitting in the driveway. And there is a particular kind of tired that comes from working a wrench all day at a gas station, and then working a wrench half the night on your own car for a race that might not even happen if the weather turned. It took your hands, knuckles split and resplit on stubborn bolts, a burn scar up one forearm from an exhaust manifold that never quite healed right. The permanent black half-moons under your fingernails that no amount of scrubbing ever fully lifted. And it took a piece of your nerve you never got back, because every single time you dropped that clutch at the line, some small cold part of you did the arithmetic on how fast a mistake could turn into something you couldn't take back. A blown tire at 90, an oil patch you didn't see, another man's hands, not as steady as you trusted them to be. Your old man watched you pour every free hour and every free dollar into that engine, and said less and less about it as the months went on, until one night he came out to the driveway while you had your head under the hood and just stood there a while watching, and finally said, quiet, that he hoped to God you knew what you were doing, because he'd watched this road take men before, and it had never once asked their permission first. And Ruthie rode shotgun on every single run with a stopwatch in one hand and her heart in her throat the whole time. And she never once let you see it. Not once, because that was the deal the two of you had made without ever once saying it out loud. She'd sit right there next to the fastest thing on the road and trust your hands completely. And you'd spend every waking hour making sure that trust was never once misplaced. Two things broke, close together, the way it always seems to happen. The first came on a Friday night you'd raced 50 times before on a road you thought you knew down to the last seam in the blacktop. You lined up against a kid named Cutter you'd never once trusted the way Duke's rules said you should. Hot-headed, sloppy. Driving a black 68 he'd wrecked and rebuilt twice already. But the money on the line was more than you'd ever raced for, and your own pride talked louder that night than Duke's voice in your head ever did. Halfway down the 4 miles, Cutter drifted a half-lane wide chasing you, caught the shoulder gravel at 90, and put his car into a spin that ended in a fruit stand a family had set up early that morning at the edge of the road. A stand that had no business being anywhere near a strip you'd have sworn on your life was clear. Nobody died that night. You have told yourself that fact 10,000 times since. The way a man tells himself the one true thing he's got left to hold on to. But a boy of maybe 12, out helping his family set up before the sun was even fully up, was standing close enough that he never walked the same again. And the sound of that impact is a sound that has never once, in all the years since, fully left the inside of your skull. Your own hands were clean that night. You never touched Cutter's car, never forced him wide, and the law and Duke and every man on that strip road told you, then and later, that it wasn't your fault. But you had raced him anyway, against everything Duke ever taught you about a man you couldn't trust to keep his own lane, and no amount of anybody telling you it wasn't your fault ever quite reached the part of you that knew you'd broken the one rule that mattered most, and a child had paid for it. The second thing came a few weeks after, and it came for the dice. You were out on the strip road alone, running a shakedown pass on a fresh-built engine, pushing it harder than you should have out of some need to prove to yourself that your hands were still exactly as good as they'd always been, and you caught that one bad seam in the blacktop you knew better than to hit at speed, and the car snapped sideways and you fought it back straight with your heart in your throat and your knuckles white on the wheel. You walked away without a scratch. But the fishing line under your mirror snapped in the violence of it, and the dice, the white one and the black one, the pair your granddad had hung there the day you first sat behind a wheel, went bouncing somewhere down into the dark footwell and out the door when you finally stopped shaking long enough to open it. And you got down on your hands and knees in the dark on the shoulder of that road with a flashlight and searched for the better part of an hour. And you never found them. Not that night, and not ever. Here's the part nobody on that strip road ever saw coming, and it wasn't Cutter, and it wasn't the fruit stand, and it wasn't any one man's fault at all. It was a filing cabinet full of actuarial tables in an insurance office 2 states away, where somebody had finally sat down and run the numbers on boys exactly like you. Starting that year and the next, the companies quietly rolled out something they called a youthful operator surcharge, and right alongside it, a whole new category of premium pegged straight to horsepower and cubic inches, so that the very same engine you had built with your own 2 hands to prove what you were worth now cost more to insure in a single year than the whole car had cost you to buy. And it wasn't only the insurance men doing arithmetic in a distant office. That same year, a bill got signed in Washington that most folks on your strip road never once heard the name of, a Clean Air Act. And behind it, a brand new agency nobody around here had ever had reason to think about. And together they meant that every engine coming off a factory floor from here on out was going to breathe leaner and run cooler and hit harder against the ceiling than any engine ever had before, all in the name of a sky none of you could see getting any different with your own 2 eyes. And then a few years further on came the thing that finished it for good. A war on the far side of the world shut off the oil taps, and gas that had once been cheap enough to burn without thinking about it overnight became a thing a man had to line up for hours to buy, at a price that made a 9 mile per gallon big block feel like a luxury only a fool would still be running. One at a time, none of it aimed at you personally, all of it landing on you anyway. The insurance you couldn't afford, the parts the factories stopped making, the gas you couldn't get, and right behind all of it, your own town finally passing an ordinance against racing on any public road inside the county line, with a fine and an impound lot waiting for the first man they caught. There was no one villain out there to be angry at. Just a filing cabinet, and a law, and an oil tanker turned back at a foreign port. 3 things nobody on that road had any say over, quietly deciding together that the era you'd built your whole life around was over. So the strip road went quiet, a few cars at a time, the way a town goes quiet when the mill finally shuts for good. Not all at once, just fewer every month. Until one night you sat out there for 2 hours and not one other engine ever showed. And Duke, who'd watched this whole thing coming longer than you had, came to you with an idea he'd been chewing on for a year. A group of men from 4 counties, pooling money to build a real strip a few miles out. Chalked lanes and a proper tower and a sanctioning body's blessing. A place where a man could do exactly what you'd always done, at exactly the speed you'd always done it, with a police escort standing there approving of every single run instead of waiting to arrest you at the end of it. You put in what money you had left, and on the day it opened, you stood at the starting line in a crisp new shirt with a flag in your hand instead of a wheel under yours because your knees had never been the problem. But somebody had to run that tower, and Duke said your ear for an engine, and your feel for a fair start made you the only man for the job. Ruthie stood the timing lights instead of the shotgun seat, calling elapsed times off the board the same steady way she'd once called shift points off the touch. And between the two of you, you built something that could not be shut down by an insurance man or a law or an oil tanker, because it was already exactly what all three of them had wanted all along: safe, sanctioned, off the public road for good. Duke came by that first week, said nothing for a while, and then set a small paper bag on the tower counter without a word. Inside, it was a pair of dice, one white, one black, bought off a rack in the strip's own little souvenir shop. Nothing like your granddad's pair, not the same dice at all. And you hung them anyway, on a fresh length of fishing line, under the mirror of the pace car you drove up and down that new legal quarter-mile, because a man needs something swinging under his mirror, even when the thing it once meant is a decade gone and never coming back. Look at what they call speed now. Go on, look. That whole strip road out past the foundry is a distribution warehouse's parking lot today. Acres of painted lines with not one single tire mark anywhere on them, and the sanctioned track you and Duke poured your last dollars into closed its gates years back, sold off in pieces to men who turned it into storage units. The cars that are fast now are faster than anything you ever built with your own hands, faster off the line than physics had any right to allow back in your day. But they get there in total silence. No lump, no roll, no throat-clearing rumble that told a whole town somebody serious had arrived. Just a hush and a shove in your back and a screen telling you the number instead of your own gut telling you the truth. Racing itself hasn't died. It's just moved indoors into an app, a leaderboard, a closed course you pay to rent by the hour with a company man standing by to make sure nobody so much as thinks about doing this on a real road anymore, and every single lap gets logged by a black box under the dash that reports straight back to an insurance company that has never once, not for one single second, stopped running the numbers on people like you. There's no gas station kid out there anymore who can build the fastest thing on the road out of another man's wreck and a stack of parts nobody wanted, because there's no engine left to open up and learn with your own two hands, just a sealed unit that a computer tunes better than any man ever could. And a boy who wants to go fast today rents the feeling instead of building it. And the mirror of the car they hand you at the rental counter is bare glass, nothing swinging under it, nothing hanging there at all, because nobody who drives these things has ever once needed a pair of dice to tell them the difference between standing still and flying. So here's the question, friend, and only you can answer it. Was it worth it? The money you poured into an engine instead of a house? The knuckles that never quite healed right? The sound of that impact that has never once, in all these years, fully left your head? The boy who never walked the same again because you raced a man you knew in your bones you shouldn't have trusted. The dice you never found, out there somewhere still, buried under 50 years of gravel and dust on a shoulder that doesn't exist as a road anymore. Would you climb back into that seat and do the whole of it over again, knowing everything it was going to cost you? The boy at the fruit stand, the granddad's dice lost in the dark, the whole world quietly deciding, one filing cabinet and one law and one oil tanker at a time, that the thing you loved most wasn't allowed anymore. And here is the truth you would never say to a living soul except in the dark like this. You would, every single time. Because for a few years, on 4 straight miles of forgotten blacktop, with a pair of dice swinging under your mirror and a girl's hand flat and steady on the dash beside you, You built something with your own 2 hands that made you the fastest thing in the whole dark world. And there is not one silent, computer-tuned machine they've built since that has ever once made a single soul stand at the edge of a road at midnight just to watch it go by. You knew better. You were there, hands on the wheel, dice in the mirror, before the world decided speed was something you rented instead of something you built.
The yellow lines are fading in the rearview mirror now. This ancient highway has quieted its roar. I've driven through the shadows of the only life I knew, and I won't be returning anymore. So farewell to the endless sky and dust upon the breeze, to every town that whispered in the night. The open road is folding like a map of memories, and fading out of sight. Just a single quiet guitar. Goodbye to the road.